episode 333, Volcanoes, Climate and Cows. This is the Change Underground. I'm your host, John. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Food and soil health are intricately linked, and the health of one directly impacts the health of the other. Fairly obvious. Soil is the foundation of our food system. The top 6 inches of the land mass and the fact that it rains semi-regularly is what keeps us alive. The key words there are semi-regularly. Since the Holocene, 12 to 10,000 years before present, there has been some climate variability, but within fairly, relatively speaking, narrow extremes. For most of that time, human population levels were such that our impact was far less than it is today. I've been listening to Peter Frankopan's latest book, The Earth Transformed, An Untold Story. Maybe to Peter, but this work is the latest in a long line of such books. The point is, I've noticed the effects of both humans and tectonic events on human societies. This is a legacy of having studied archaeology at uni. And by extension, the environs on which those societies are located and those tectonic plates are located. He also works in ocean temperature variations, El Nino, La Nina, North Atlantic oscillations and so on. The point being we have been, as a species, affected by changes in the longer-term cycles and short-term ones too. Things like rainfall are dependent upon ocean temperatures in the shortish term and by the rise and fall of mountain ranges in the longer term. The rise of Bronze Age cities in different parts of the world at different times increased the ability to gather food and other resources, but also placed a higher number of individuals at risk from disasters. Now, these disasters could be marauding armies, diseases, floods, soil collapse, and so on. The events, though, that seem to have had the most deleterious effect on humans and their associated livestock and plant resources were connected with, and wait for it, sudden drops in temperature. The sudden drops in temperature and missing summers, say 1816 was one such year, known as the year without summer, link in the show notes, was felt across Western Europe, Canada, China and India in particular. This was the result, it seems, from the eruption of Mount Tambora in present-day Indonesia. Started rumbling in 1812 and blew on the 15th of July 1815, about 4 weeks after the Battle of Waterloo, if that gives any context for people. The effect of this eruption was to produce a volcanic winter. Lots of dust and rock debris and particulates in the atmosphere, blocking sunlight from reaching the crops or anything else for that matter. Starvation, disease and so on, of course, followed. The temperature is believed to have dropped somewhere between 0.4 and 0.7 degrees C. An earlier event, 536 current era, lingered on until 547 and is believed to have resulted in a similar effect on the missing summer of 1816, but was augmented by further sizable volcanic eruptions, not just 536, but also 540 and 547. These had the combined effect of lowering temperatures by about 2.7 degrees C. Apart from the asteroid visited upon the dinosaurs, there have been 4 mass extinction events, not counting the current one we're living through. So the thing is, things can change very quickly. To lower temperatures long enough for an electrification of the economy and to avoid the nastiness of a 2+ degrees C rise in temperatures, we probably need a series of volcanic eruptions, or even maybe a small asteroid impact. Now, to be honest, this latter idea does not fill me with hope, and neither for that matter does the former. But the former is more likely, I suspect. I can't recall any major series of eruptions, certainly not the Krakatoa or Tambora size ones in my lifetime, or even since 1816. Krakatoa was a bit later. In the meantime, electrification and non-carbon power sources and implementing them is an imperative. And while the big picture points to us overshooting 1.5 and, to be blatantly frank, 2 degrees C too, the horrors of industrial agriculture continue to blossom. Well, blossom's not the word, expand. From the Vox website, dated the 14th of April, comes a terrifying post entitled, "A fire killed 18,000 cows in Texas. It's a horrifyingly normal disaster." Quote, "An explosion fired a dairy farm on Monday in the Texas Panhandle has been called the deadliest cattle barn fire ever recorded. It left one worker in a critical condition and killed 18,000 cows. The cause of the fire, which occurred in South Fork Dairy Farm in Dimmitt, 75 miles northwest of Lubbock, is still under investigation by the State Fire Marshal. In an interview with a local news station, Castro County Sheriff Sal Riviera said it may have been caused by the facility's manure management equipment. It's possible that it overheated and the methane and things like that might have ignited and spread out with an explosion and a fire, he said, end quote. That's correct. I've said the number twice, but you heard it correctly. 18,000 cows incinerated. It's not surprising there was a huge methane bubble with that much manure. That's about 810 cubic metres per day, or nearly 10,000 gallons of manure produced each day. Basically, factory farms are a process for concentrating nutrients, in this case dairy nutrients, removing some milk and body heat, and dropping the rest out the back end as manure. The energy involved to bring sufficient feed to these beasts and then remove their waste is mind-boggling. And the animal cruelty beyond words before they were even incinerated. But wait, the point of the article is that this sort of fire and burnt offering on the altar of no-holds-barred laissez-faire capitalism is not that unusual. 6.5 million farmed animals have been reported as burnt alive in the last decade in the US alone. The article suggests this is an underreporting. Most of those were chickens, but suffering is suffering. What has become of us as a species that we condone this sort of suffering, let alone waste of resources and degradation of soil, to ensure a less expensive meat product? And we are talking meat products, not whole animals. The carcasses of these unfortunately factory-farmed animals are nothing more than widgets in the food production system of the world. I'm beyond white-hot anger over this. And if you'd like to be even more appalled, read the article, but be warned, the images are very, very disquieting. As I've been arguing for basically all of the 7 years, 2.5 months of this podcast, we need to end factory farms. We need to get livestock back on the soils they co-evolved with. We needed to do this 50 years ago, but today is the next best option. If you're fortunate enough to live in a democracy, annoy the living daylights out of your elected representatives. Regulation is all that keeps laissez-faire attitudes and actions in check. And we do have the power to change the regulations. The article points out because these are animal facilities, there's no requirements in many US states for fire alarms nor even sprinkler systems. Now, the market should, according to theory, correct for this, but clearly it is not. The money to be made versus the risk of the fire means that the fire prevention systems are not being employed. Make enough noise to frighten the bejeebus out of companies running these obscene enterprises. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Thank you all for listening. I'll be back next time.